What's going on, everybody? Aaron O'Neill here from Silent Ground Performance. So today we're going to be talking about recovery, and in particular recovery strategies. So we're going to cover different types of techniques that are commonly used to enhance recovery and induce recovery, and the pros and cons of each, and which are better, which work and which don't. So before we get started, I just want to outline what recovery actually is. So as you can see here, recovery is the process for re-establishment of performance abilities. So that's basically after you work out, is that full recovery, is getting back to those baseline fitness levels and to achieve a higher level of fitness than pre-exercise levels. So this is basically the whole idea of super compensation, where basically you exercise, so say you lift weights, you go for a run, and then 2 or 3 days after you go for that run or lift, your performance is decreased because your body is adapting to, say, that run. And then when you come back a couple of days later and you exercise or do that same run again, say you run it in a faster time. So say if you did 5k in 20 minutes one day, the next couple of days you rested and let yourself recover, and then you came back 3 or 4 days later and you can run it in 19 minutes 50 seconds or something like that. So that's a full recovery, is getting a higher level of fitness prior to what you were before. Alright, so before we get into the different techniques that you can use to enhance your recovery, I just need to lay the groundwork first of how you can set up your body's ability to recover as much as possible. And it comes in 3 main areas. So you've got sleep, nutrition and stress reduction. So when it comes to sleep, we've all heard about the benefits of getting 8 hours sleep at least every night. It enhances performance, it improves brain function, enhances recovery, and it reduces injury risk by as much as 1.7 times. So that's huge, from just 8 hours of good quality sleep every night. So when it comes to the meat and potatoes of recovery, you need to get your sleep in. And I understand it gets hard when you have school or college and you have work and then sports and homework and all this to balance, but just even setting yourself a sleep schedule every day. So say, if you're trying to get to bed by 11 and maybe up by 7, there's 8 hours, and that's pretty achievable. It's more important really to make sure you get that sleep pattern rather than just say going to bed at 12 one night and then 10 the next and then 1 the next day and getting up at different times as well. Just getting your body into that sleep cycle can really help, and get those consistent hours of sleep can really help enhance your body's ability to recover. The next one that I want to talk about briefly is nutrition. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we are going to have another nutrition breakdown in a couple of weeks' time. But when it comes to nutrition, especially post-workout, we need to focus on replenishing those glycogen stores. So basically, glycogen is carbohydrates, and it's what your muscles use for energy. So when you exercise, your body uses up those glycogen stores stored in your muscles and in your liver, and then they need to be replaced so you can get more energy back into the muscles, and they can grow bigger and stronger and adapt. And the same goes for protein. You need to be getting your protein in after your workouts again, because during exercise your muscles break down, and when they break down they need to rebuild and adapt. If you aren't getting the protein into your body so they can adapt, well then your new chances of a good recovery fall drastically. And then finally is just reducing stress. So in particular when it comes to stress, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, is we want to get our body into the parasympathetic nervous system. So basically what this means is the parasympathetic nervous system is when your body is in that rest and digest phase. It's relaxed, it's not trying to be active and on high alert, and your body then in that phase is able to adapt and recover. It's the opposite to the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight phase, which we're going to talk about now in a couple of minutes. So when it comes to stress, it's just keeping getting yourself relaxed during the day, reducing the likelihood of kind of spiking your nervous system and putting yourself in this high alert zone, which inhibits digestion and all these other things, so you can recover fully. When it comes to the nervous system and recovery and performance, there's two main branches we focus on. We have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic system is basically that fight or flight phase of, when you're in exercise and your neurons are excited and they're getting your muscles going and your heart rate is up, and it's kind of, it's that game scenario. And then the parasympathetic system is that rest or digest phase. So when you're in the parasympathetic system, it's really all about kind of regulating the body and allowing recovery to take place. When we're in that sympathetic nervous system, our responses are heightened. And in order to heighten our responses, our nervous system, it kind of disables our ability to digest food and allow the adaptations from exercise to take place. They can only take place in the parasympathetic nervous system, where our body's kind of allowed to relax, digest food, and regulate and readapt to any kind of stresses we've put on it. So that's why after exercise, to induce recovery, it's vital we get back into the parasympathetic nervous system. And there are a couple of ways of doing that, which is what we're going to talk about now. When it comes to muscular fatigue after exercise and that kind of tight feeling the next couple of days after, it's caused by something called DOMS, which is the delayed onset of muscle soreness. So basically what this is inside your muscles at a very, very small level, these things called sarcomeres are basically getting broke down. And these are kind of like the units that make up your muscle fibers. So at that level, they're breaking down. And when they break down at a large quantity, we get this thing called DOMS, which is that kind of that damaged feeling in the muscle a couple of days, that tight feeling a couple of days after exercise. So how do we reduce these DOMS in the days after exercise? Well, like I said, it comes down to getting that parasympathetic system back, or that nervous system back into kind of that recovery mode as quick as possible. So getting back into the parasympathetic system. And in order to do that, we need to gain control over two main things. It's get our heart rate back down to normal and get our breathing rate back down to normal. So when we're looking at recovery strategies, it's all really about kind of teaching ourselves to relax. So that's the main thing. Before we get into these three strategies I have here on the board, which are the main three we're going to speak about, and we're going to touch on two other ones. But when it comes to the meat and potatoes of what kind of gets you back down to that normal zone to induce recovery, it's getting your heart rate back down to normal and getting your breathing rate back down to normal. So three main methods that I use personally that work the best for me, the most kind of science and studies have been done on them, are stretching, foam rolling, and then breathing techniques. So we're going to start with stretching. So basically, what is stretching? And the answer is we really don't know. Science hasn't fully proved what actually happens when you stretch yet. But the theory is that when you stretch a muscle, for that period that you stretch it, you reduce the blood flow into it. So when the blood isn't flowing into the muscle, the nutrients aren't getting to it, so it can't do anything. But then once you release that stretch, it causes this quick influx of nutrients and blood into the muscle, and this is what the theory kind of says causes that relaxation and recovery. It's that influx of nutrients into the muscle. So when it comes to reducing DOMS, stretching actually isn't that effective at reducing DOMS. It only reduces DOMS by about 1 to 4%, which isn't anything, so you're not really getting anything from stretching. But what stretching is great for is teaching your body to consistently get back into that parasympathetic nervous system. Because when you're stretching, and you're using proper breathing techniques, you naturally have to relax. Otherwise, you're going to kind of end up holding your breath and holding a lot of tension. So if you're breathing through your stretches, you are going to teach your body to fall back into the parasympathetic nervous system. So studies have shown that stretching is great for improving parasympathetic nervous system activity, which is getting your body to relax, and then heart rate variability, which basically means that, say from exercising, your heart rate goes up, and then when you kind of start to relax after your exercise by like stretching or something, your heart rate comes back down to normal. So in the studies that they did, they showed that this happened over a 28-day period, was when you could really see these improvements in parasympathetic nervous system activity. So basically the takeaway message from stretching is that although straight after a workout it's not as effective as other techniques, if you're consistently stretching, so say like when you wake up in the morning you go through a stretching routine, or before you go to bed, this is where you get those benefits from stretching. The next one technique we're going to look at is probably the most commonly known one these days and the most used one by athletes, and it's foam rolling. So foam rolling is basically myofascial release. It's self-myofascial release. So when you think of a muscle, say my hand here was a muscle, right? The fascia is this layer that wraps around the muscle. So kind of if I had my hand and I wanted to protect my hand when I was doing, say, some garden work or something, I put a glove on. That's kind of what the fascia is. It's this layer that wraps around the muscle that sort of protects it from, other things that are going on in the body. And when you foam roll, you're basically kind of teaching this fascia to relax. So like when you're foam rolling, you're actually not, you just can't get enough pressure from a foam roller or a tennis ball to get deep enough into the muscle to actually make it relax. So those trigger points you release, you're actually releasing them in this kind of fascia around the muscle. So that's what foam rolling does. So basically, when you're foam rolling, what you're doing is you're relaxing the fascia, which in turn, when it starts to relax, the muscle is going to relax a bit more. Now, foam rolling has been shown to be really effective at reducing DOMs. So you can reduce them by as much as 20%. So that's huge. That's like, you're reducing it by 1/5. So that's massive. So the takeaway point from foam rolling is it's great for reducing these DOMs, for kind of helping the muscles themselves relax and induce that recovery. Again, to get the most out of it, you have to use some sort of breath relaxation. So it's not like when you're foam rolling, it can be hard, and that tension you feel and that tightness in the muscle can be almost kind of a painful feeling, and we tend to hold our breath. So when you're foam rolling, just make sure you are breathing. That's the main thing if you want to get that full benefit from it. What I would suggest is that you pair maybe your foam rolling with something like a breathing technique, which is what I'm going to speak about now. When it comes to breathing techniques, we're not talking full-on meditation here, right? Nobody wants to go through an hour or so in the gym or 2 hours on the basketball court and then sit there and meditate. That's not what we want to do. But a really simple technique that I use every time I work out, and it works every time to help me get control over my breathing and relax my heart rate, is this method called box breathing. So basically what you do is you can lie on the floor and you raise your feet up on, say, like the edge of a bed, or like even just put them up on the wall so that your feet are elevated, and you breathe in for 4 seconds and then you breathe out for 4 seconds. Now there are a couple of different ways of doing this. To me, this is how I do it. I go in for 4 seconds and out for 4 seconds. Some coaches or other people will tell you to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4, and then kind of like stay empty for 4 seconds and go again. Personally, I don't like this. I find when I'm kind of in that holding your breath or not having any breath, I kind of do the opposite of relaxing, and I start to kind of pick myself up a bit. So I just breathe in for 4 and out for 4. And I set a timer for 5 minutes, and that's what I do for the 5 minutes. and you will feel yourself come out of that a lot more relaxed. You really will. So like that's my go-to technique for enhancing that recovery straight after a workout. So this is what we're talking about, like straight after you finish that like intense gym session or like a football match or a workout, you want to get that heart rate and breathing rate back down. This is the best method for us to do that quickly. So for me, straight after a workout or some sort of a training session, I combine these three techniques. Okay, it roughly takes me a half an hour or so, and like I'm okay with that because I know it's going to really help with my recovery straight after any sort of exercise. So I'll do a box breathing technique for about 5 minutes, then I'll spend anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes foam rolling, and then a 5 or 10 minute stretch. So that's like after my workouts, that's what I do. Now I'm not saying you have to combine all of those techniques. You try them out and find which one works best for you. If you find you can get yourself to relax with stretching, great, do that. If you find you can get yourself to relax with foam rolling, do that. If it's the breathing, do that. But if you are doing the breathing, I would suggest that you have a regular foam rolling and stretching routine as well, because there are so many benefits from like getting that flexibility and range of motion as well that you just can't get from simply breathing. So just find what works for you. That's really the main thing when it comes to recovery, is finding what works for you and sticking to it and doing it religiously. Final technique I want to speak about, and only briefly because it's still a relatively kind of new technique and there's still a lot of research being done on it, is hot cold therapy and ice baths. So the idea of the hot cold therapy and the ice baths is that you reduce the inflammation that kind of is caused by exercise. Now, this is a two-sided coin. Reducing that inflammation can be a good and bad thing depending on the context you use this technique, right? So when we exercise, our body, as an adaptation, our body naturally inflames. So like I say, if we go into the gym and we do a heavy day of lifting, our body naturally inflames around those muscles to cause adaptation. So that adaptation is how we kind of recover and come back stronger than before. So if we're icing and using ice baths to reduce this inflammation, we're doing ourselves out of a favour. We're not allowing our body to fully make those adaptations. And a study has actually been done, I think it was either this year or it's fairly recent, and it showed that ice baths actually reduce muscle mass. So it makes sense. If you're reducing that inflammation around the muscle, it can't adapt and it can't grow as big as it could. If anything, it's going to kind of do the opposite. It's not going to want to adapt because the inflammation is kind of being seen as a bad thing. So, like I said, this is a two-sided coin. Now, if we're in season, so say we're a basketball player and we could be playing 2 or 3 games a week, or a footballer playing once or twice a week, these ice baths can be used to our advantage, because now we can reduce that inflammation around muscles and joints, and as a result we can induce recovery that little bit quicker, which is what we want if we're playing a lot of games over a short period of time. We don't want our body to kind of break down and rebuild. We want it to maintain as much as possible so we can come out and perform again at the next level, the next day at the same level. So that's pretty much it from me on recovery. If you have any questions, please do ask. During the week I will have a video on foam rolling and just like foam rolling for the different muscle groups, so how to do it, how long and how much and all these different things. And if you go through my Instagram and other places like that, you can find a lot of different stretching exercises for the lower and upper body. So I hope this helps, and I'll see you next time.